sources, we mean those debts where the grant element, that is the element that is given as a gift in the layman language, is 35%. So it means for every dollar we contract in the international market with our partners, it must fulfill the requirement that the gift component will be 35, and we will only service in present value terms 65%. That's two. Then the third element is the nature of the debt itself. That has been very prominent, and we have even gone on to explain it further. And it's difficult to discuss debt with just words. We need to come up with graphs, with numbers, with dates, and that's what we are going. That's the part. I've tasked my team that we will have a press event where we'll invite the press to walk them through the debt evolution. Because I will be deliberate on this question, because it has been asked, and it's rightly so. Because were it not for debt service, we could have done much more. But this is not unique to Gambia alone. When COVID took off, all the countries globally, their debt service, their debt element went up. Just to indicate, you see, the COVID bailout package that was done by the Western countries was not from revenue sources, was through their borrowed funds. That's why you will see after COVID, all the debts of the countries have gone up. And we will share with you global publications such as the World Debt Report that is published by the World Bank, which indicates the debt of all countries in the world in terms of obligations internationally are concerned. And not only that, in our debt situation, Gambia government is the borrower of record. But there is a significant portion of the debt which are owed by the parastatals, such as the NAWEC, the GAMTEL, the GAMCEL, the GCCA, and the Gambia GGC, which government is assuming. So that's why if you look at our total debt stock, a large part of it is related to that. Then the other element that causes debt to be a bit elevated is we have 60% of our debt portfolio in foreign currency. You see, for every decline in the exchange rate, the dollars equivalent of those debts are going. So this, in a nutshell, are the impact of the debt situation. Our debt stock is elevated but sustainable, and efforts are being made to contain it. So I'm sure we can go on, but like as I have, my team will also take up for additional clarification.
Yes, I think I want to have on 2 points. One is the fact that because we are taking up contingent liabilities from the state-owned enterprises, this is also because they have not been performing financially very well. So going forward, the reforms in the SOEs are expected to ensure that all SOEs also live up to their obligations in terms of paying debt. So that could be an avenue in terms of fiscal space created as a result of this. But the general discussion about debt is also taking debt is not bad in general. It's where you invest in the debt itself. If you look at what has been happening in this country, there have been substantial investments in the education sector. A case in point is the Paraba Bantan campus. Another one is the infrastructure development with the Ministry of Works, roads, bridges. So this will also help the country in its growth trajectory and its revenue earning capacity to repay the debt in the medium to long term. So I just wanted to underscore that this notion of people talking about debt is a major concern, but as long as we are investing the monies in the right areas, the payback period in the long term will come. So thank you very much.
You want to add? Yes, Director of Debt is also going to chip in.
Thank you very much. Just to add to Honorable Minister's point regarding the volume of debt service, I just want to draw your attention to the fact that also when the East government came in, the debt to GDP ratio was almost 120%.
Okay.
So part of the rationalization was how do we move ahead? Was to see some of these SOEs that were, seriously bleeding at the time, they were seriously indebted, to assume some of those debts and package it as one part for government now to assume that responsibility. And in doing so, in consultation with our partner, there was a strong recommendation also to do a debt restructuring. So in addition to the debt suspension, debt service suspension initiative, there was also a debt restructuring. And the debt restructuring, was carved in a way that, there were mainly just interest payments. So there was a moratorium in most of the principal payments, mainly with our large creditors such as the Islamic Development Bank, the Badias and so on. So as a result, when these things was restructured, it was restructured for 5 years. And when it ballooned, basically in 2024, coming to 2020, that's why now you've seen a significant increase in terms of debt service. That in addition to the exchange rate exposure. Minister, rightly put it here that if you look at the exchange rate, some of these debts were at the time of contraction where, exchange rate was around, the lower 50s, or in fact below 50. Now you've seen the same exchange rate standing at 72%, 73%. So these are things that are really affecting. But in terms of our assessment of the debt, year in, year out, and of course, at the regional level also, the ECOWAS region, within the ECOWAS region, Gambia is doing very well because I've been, in consultation with my colleagues, Nigeria, Sierra Leone, and other countries. Gambia is doing very well in terms of our debt sustainability analysis. Of course, we are in a high stage of debt distress, but we are very sustainable. And in terms of the mix of our debt also, compared to most of those countries, our debt, most of them are fixed, fixed term loans, where, it's not like market linked variable interest rate, where interest rate can jack up any time. So most of the debts are like fixed term. And of course, they are concessional. And the minister has already explained the concept of concessionality. So we'll continue to drive in that direction. In terms of the domestic side, we are also working very hard to also see how we can really have a good blend of our domestic debt, structure, so that at least elongating some of the short-term into longer-term maturities is also what we are working on. So by and large, we are keeping an eye on this, and exchange rate exposure will continue to be a pressure on us, but we are doing the best to make sure that that is at a manageable level. Thank you.
Thank you.
Okay.
Thank you.
And the next person?
Yes.
Yes. Can you state your name and which institution, which press you are representing?
Okay, good afternoon. My name is Yahya Jammeh, Wellingara newspaper. First and foremost, I want to use this opportunity to say big thank you to the minister and the entire ministry for fulfilling yet another constitutional requirement of the National Assembly and of course the very domestic. The first one has to do with the payment of the estimate. So going into the question, when it comes to the budget, there is a segment or a component that I'm always concerned with, and that has to do with the furniture and fittings. This is appearing yearly in our budget estimates. And if you look at it, the furniture and fitting, I think these are fixed assets. They can actually serve for 3 to 4 or even 5 years. So looking at the estimates for this budget component, in the 2026 estimate, it is about under the general expenses, it is about 91 million with some, So the question now is, will the ministry consider coming up with a policy or a strategy to say, even where there will be furniture fittings to be allocated, then let the allocated ones, serve for at least 3 years to make sure that the expenses on the would that budget item is actually saved and then be maybe spent in areas like health, agriculture, and education? Thank you very much.
Yeah, thank you very much. And, you make a very important observation. Just to tell you that the budget line for furniture and fittings, this should not be appearing every year in each ministry. However, the problem that we have is because you are also not providing for them enough. This is why you provide a small amount and they buy, next day you provide another unit buy. So this is the problem. But I agree with you, the principle of furniture and fittings.
That's replacement also.
Yes. Yes, and they are also reminding me that sometimes you also have to replace the furniture. That when the furniture is old, you have to replace it. But in principle, the amount that we are giving are not sufficient. So ideally, if it were sufficient, you can then say that for the next 5 years, don't bring any furniture budget to us. So that's the problem. Thank you very much. But it's an observation. I think within the ministry, we'll look at it in our consultations to see how we can address your concern. Thank you very much. But it's a good contribution.
Next. Can we have somebody with a roaming mic, please?
Let us also bear that today is Friday, so we have obligations to go and pray also.
For QTV, I think you would skip you because you already have enough of the minister. We'll give you one.
Thank you. My name is President of Gambia. My question has to do with inflation. Yesterday, I was at the Central Bank and they mentioned that inflation has declined from 10% to 7% at the Central Bank. How sustainable is this reduction and what are the things that will actually reverse this trend? The other thing you mentioned about transparency and accountability, but procurement standards continue to persist in daily media reports. What are the new measures you will take to ensure this is prevented in the 2026 budget? Because chunk of the budget goes to the procurement.
Yes, that's a very good question. And I'll start with the last one on transparency and procurement. See, the fact that there is now an enhanced disclosure, leakages of financial malfeasance in the press is a good thing. Because when things are exposed, then it becomes a deterrent. And what is happening, we are in a public space, and we are aware of this. So that's why you will see increasingly more and more in terms of our reporting mechanism. The reports are coming out more frequently. You have audits that are completed, and once audits are completed, we are very liberal in disclosure as a ministry. Just to quote a case in point, when we finished the accounts of 2021, 2022, and 2023, we encouraged the National Assembly to disclose this publicly, even though protocol-wise it would have gone through the FPAC before it goes out. What we believe in transparency, and that is one of the biggest tools you can use. Another area we encourage the public is to really participate in public procurement as Gambians and Gambian companies. And if the procurement process has not or does not follow the stipulated processes, the participants in that procurement process have a voice. They can complain to the ministry through the Gambia Complaints Review Board, and it will be looked upon. What we want is, we are also introducing digitalization in the procurement space. The GPPA is working on the digitalizing the bidding documents, and we at the ministry are seeing what we can do. Even we are working on one of the biggest areas is the airline tickets. We are working on trying to digitalize that. to start government procurement of air tickets online instead of through. But why it's happening the way it's happening? Because the existing rules provide for 3 codes, but then we have worked with cabinet and we have made significant improvement in these areas. I think transparency is the responsibility of every citizen. It's not just good enough to sit in the corner and say government officials are this. When you say it, like they say as a security tool, see it, say it, and it is sorted. So I would encourage the general public, we as a ministry, all the reforms we have implemented over the years have actually improved our transparency and our perception to corruption index, as I have mentioned in the statement, has increased tremendously. Of course, there is a tendency that more corruption, simply because it's more reported. Now you have a social media. If you have one corruption case, it's reported, maybe social media, Facebook, YouTube, Twitter, everywhere. So it's that expansion of the media outlet, which is encouraged. But be rest assured that the government is really keen on enhancing transparency.
So you will realize that if, for instance, 2021 results are announced, 2022, 2023, the intensity of the report in terms of procurement violations will be more than if we were current and just dealing with 1 year. So I think that also has to come up with it.
Maybe what
The inflation.
what would also happen is that starting 2026, the first quarter of 2026, you will also see the accounts for the 2025 being submitted to the National Audit Office. So it means that now we'll be doing in-year reporting of accounts, reduce the level of inflation. You will see also that food prices have actually gone down due to investment in importation of rice and reduction, assisting importers in that light. So you will definitely see that as well, because supply constraints have also eased. The reason why we had inflation to that extent was also we had tightened our supply constraints. Now things are actually easing down, so you see those imported inflations that we used to have before go down, and now you are also seeing it into in the market as well. But we're still not out of the woods. I think there is a lot that needs to be done as well in order for that level of sustainability that you actually mentioned for it to be sustained.
Yes, I think on inflation, I can also come in there. If you look at one of the key commodities that is consumed by every Gambian, that is rice. A bag of rice before, a couple of months back, used to be around 2,200. But with the intervention of JAH into the sector, which is a Gambian indigenous business, now wholesale price is 1,650, retail price 1,700. This was made possible through the deliberate effort of the government to support JAH. We will always recall our experience when we had this Badia facility of $50 million. And it went through a very transparent process of assessing, and we as a ministry say financing. But we are not going to guarantee them. We are not going to pay any fees on their part. JAH Oil was the only company that fulfilled the conditions. But at the time, population didn't understand. They thought there was some underhand deal. But today, we are beginning to see the results of that. What it meant was, before this intervention, I remember a bag of rice should be 2,200. So if it is now 1,650, that means easily about $400 to $500 per bag is what has been the reduction in the price of bag. Of course, you can choose to go and buy a bag of 3,000. That's individual choices. But what the government works on is the average consumption basket. Then you come to fuel pricing. If you look at the price of our fuel, petrol and diesel, we are very mindful. Sometimes, in fact, we do not do full pass-through. If international prices go up very fast, we sometimes subsidize, like last month in December. Pricing for December include a subsidy of about, I think there's about a couple of $100 million. Then you come to electricity. I think we cannot emphasize this enough. The electricity tariff for NAWEC is below cost recovery. The cost of producing a kilowatt hour of electricity is less than what NAWEC is billing the citizens. So government is coming in to subsidize to the tune of $1 billion in 2024, 25, and 2026 budget. Not only that, we had a legacy debt of car power, which was about $19.6 million. Through working with the partners, World Bank has increased our budget support, and that amount has been paid off. That has helped a lot. So that has reduced the pressures to increase the energy tariff. So this has, if you come to cost of living on citizens, this is not the only area, even when it comes to education. Today, public education, that is public schools, from kindergarten to grade 12 is all free. And even textbooks, we have distributed 1.4 million textbooks free of charge to students. And for senior secondary schools, we have now started publishing and printing textbooks in country for free distribution. So these are the tools we are using at the fiscal authority to manage inflation. And of course, globally, the commodity prices are stable or going down. We expect those payoffs to come. Another added element of inflation fight is the efficiency at the ports. Before, most of the inflation used to be driven by the demurrage, congestion charges, and cost of shipment to Banjul. With the coming on board of the Al Bayrak concession, today the waiting time has been reduced from 100 and something days to 82 days. 1,300 we said in the speech is there to 82. So that means there has been substantial reduction in waiting time, and literally it has wiped out the demurrage charges, which we believe the business community will reflect in their prices. Thank you.
Yeah, maybe just to add that generally inflation is a very dynamic macroeconomic indicator, and it's also dynamic because a greater part of it also is influenced by exogenous source, external source. So you have imported inflation. Now that dynamic is more complicated because it's not within our control. But like Minister has said, there are some complementary measures that we can take to dampen the impact of inflation on the citizens, and he has highlighted some of them. But the key influencer of inflation also is on government spending. When you spend more than what you generate in terms of revenues, it obligates you to go and borrow. And that borrowing has multiple implications. It crowds out private sector because government then becomes dominant in the domestic market. But in addition to that also, the fact that we have contained our deficit level to 1% is a big signal that next year we'll contain borrowing, and then that element of borrowing which influences, which has a major impact on inflation, and we contain. So thank you very much.
My follow-up question was, what are the risks that could actually reverse this trend, as you mentioned?
Some of it has to do, for instance, inflation, food inflation is one of the, you have food, then you have energy also. They are key driving factors. The fact that we have a very good agricultural output this year in terms of all crops, groundnut, rice, and all those things, that will have a big bearing on inflation going forward.
I was asking the risks, what are the risks that we foresee that will actually reverse this trend going to be? What are the risks that we think will reverse this trend? in a likely event.
Oh, okay. If I get you right, if I get your question right, you said the inflation is a downward trend. What are the risks for that downward to be reversed? Well, basically, you know, no economy is in isolation. If the global prices for oil imports go up or the exchange rates go haywire, these are risks to any inflation. Thank you.
Can we have one more question before we wrap this up? Because today is Friday and it's almost Juma prayers. Okay.
Yeah, once again, I to a quick one. I remember when the management of the GDC, when they are able to pay, they have highlighted their issues and then they have proposed a capitalization of 1.8 billion. I just want to know, as a ministry, what are you doing about this and when do you think this can be realized? Thank you.
Well, take it. Yes.
Yes. They proposed a recapitalization of almost in excess of 1 billion. And we did actually mention that from the government side, we couldn't actually fully implement that. What the National Assembly has done this time around is to provide 300 million as a starting capital for them to commence with those resources. We're hoping that in the medium term, we will be in a position to be able to put in additional resources to that effect as well. Okay?
Yes.
Thank you once again. Maybe one thing that we'll also want to, like the Minister earlier alluded to, we'll be holding a session on debt and its detail in hopefully in the first quarter of next year, where we would the focus would be on debt and all the metrics that are associated with debt, so that at least individuals have a full comprehension of where we are coming from and where we currently are and where we intend to go with the debt stock that we have. Okay, so stay tuned to that. Minister, do you have plans
Yes.
to say conclude?
Yes, I want to once again thank the press, to welcome them to the ministry and to the transparency drive of the ministry. And be rest assured that we are your partner. We are working in the public space to deliver public service. So what we would want to always harp on, if the media has any specific question relating to the work of the ministry, do ask transparently, because it's a public office, so we'll be very cautious to engage in the media on WhatsApp or phone calls or private emails. Whatever is done in the public space should remain in public space. As such, if you have a question media-wise, write formally to the ministry and a formal response will be provided. That we believe is better than trying to in a rush to publish. It becomes a bit whereby when we correct, it might be seems as we are on an antagonistic, which is not the objective. The spirit is one of information dissemination, what we are doing. In fact, we've been encouraged as a country to engage the media more, particularly in terms of our financial space, because the partners, particularly IMF and other partners, do inform us that what your economy has been able to achieve and what your population understand is quite apart, because they are sitting there looking at the global economy and they're able to see, even like, for example, one case in point is corruption. If you talk to a typical media report, it will look like the corruption has even increased in Gambia, when actually it's the reverse. The ranking in the international out there, that is Transparency International, has given that Gambia's corruption perception index has moved from 145 ranking to 96 between 2016 and now, which is quite a leap jump. But of course, now it's more reported, and of course, it's whatever goes with it. And before I conclude, we are really, our performance with the partners is very satisfactory, and as a result, we have a number of engagements with them. We hereby inform you that the Executive Director for the African constituency of the World Bank Group will be visiting the Gambia starting next week. Come, and we, as Gambia is now the chair of the African caucus of the World Bank Group and IMF, we will be having a caucus towards end of June. And by March also, the Deputy Managing Director of the IMF is also about to visit us on a conference. So just to let you know, our press officer will engage you, and we thank you for your time, and we cannot communicate enough. Thank you.
Maybe just a quick one. I would also encourage you to be checking the Ministry of Finance's website and also other social platforms. We have a communication officer who's doing a tremendous job. And some of these questions that you might have, you can channel through her, so that the requisite directorate will also prepare responses for the ministry.
Thank you. Thanks.
Okay, on that note, members of the board, staff of the Ministry of Finance, we thank you all for attending this press conference. And we close the session.
Can I suggest that the Ministry of Finance staff, let's remain here for a minute?
Thank